Insomniac's Spider-Man 2 is still over a year away, which makes it a perfect time to start speculating story arcs so I can be inevitably disappointed when the final game releases. We're going to craft 5 story-related theories that could play out in the sequel, and no list would be complete without an honorable mention near the end. Heavy game spoilers ahead for both Spider-Man Remastered and Miles Morales. You have been warned. Number 5. Solve the power vacuum that has been left behind by the Kingpin. The end of Insomniac's Spider-Man never really solved the power vacuum left behind after the capture of Wilson Fisk. Multiple factions tried to assume the role as the new crime kingpins, first with Martin Lee and the Demons, and then with Hammerhead and his faction of the Magia, but after defeating both in the main game as well as the DLC, I think there's definitely still a space to be filled. And by the end of the sequel, I think the vacuum should remain filled. Not every loose end needs to be solved in this game. We can leave some characters at large that aren't as important as the main antagonist to set things up for DLC and future titles. I think there are 2 real options to cover this. The first would be the return of Kingpin. We know that Fisk is still on the raft, but with his power and pull, that could change very quickly. After the raft breakout, I'm surprised he didn't make his own escape. The one thing we can know for certain is that Wilson Fisk has a plan. The first game made it clear that Fisk and Peter have been fighting one another for a long time, but we didn't get to experience that, so it'd be nice to witness their full relationship ourselves. Alternatively, we could see a new entity take control. I think the most likely villain to take up the mantle as a new Kingpin would be Silvermane. Silvermane is one of the Magia Dons, and since the game left off on the defeat of one member of the Magia, Hammerhead, it would be possible for Silvermane to use that as an opportunity to unite the Magia under himself and take control in a way that Hammerhead wasn't able to. Although based on the trailer, it looks like Kraven has his own suite of goons, I don't think he'll have any interest in this role. But someone like Kingpin or Silvermane could be the one to bring Kraven to New York in order to take out Spider-Man. Then, as Kraven realizes the Spider-Men are a true challenge for him, his obsession with the hunt will leave whoever hired him to lose any sort of control that they thought they had over him as he wreaks havoc on the city and on our heroes. Number 4. Villains that enhance the atmosphere surrounding Kraven and Venom. I think that Kraven and Venom are going to have a particular effect on the tone of this Spider-Man story. Insomniac has already stated that the new game will have a darker story. Being relentlessly hunted by Kraven should fill our heroes with a feeling of helplessness and dread. And even from the short glimpse we caught of Venom, I think it's clear that he's going to be truly horrifying. So when considering the supporting cast of villains that are sure to be present in the game, I think it's important that they add to the feeling evoked by our main 2 antagonists. There are a few villains that could do this really well. The first being Mysterio. The costume nod to Mysterio during the Halloween party and the backpack mentioning his helmet means that Peter has met Mysterio before, but certainly Miles hasn't. Mysterio's illusions will make it difficult for our heroes to trust anything they see, and that includes each other. Isolating Peter and Miles from one another is a perfect way to weaken their advantage as a team and add to that sense of helplessness that being hunted will already be creating. Often the spider sense is a solid way to break through the illusions, but in the comics, Mysterio can often dampen Peter's spider sense, so relying on that power might not be possible, which would be reflected by Venom's immunity to spider sense, assuming Insomniac goes with the traditional black suit storyline. The next villain that would be perfect for the sequel is the Chameleon. Much like Mysterio, Chameleon would make it impossible for Peter and Miles to rely on one another when at any point they could be the Chameleon in disguise, and this would naturally go for any of their other allies as well. And this could lead to a lot of possible twists, turning the tables on Peter and Miles, even when they think they're safe.
Well, well, well. How the turntables...
Not to mention that the Chameleon is actually related to Kraven, so he's the perfect character to help one of our main antagonists catch one of the heroes in a trap. There are a few other villains that I think could also add to the feeling of dread and inability to rely on their allies. I'm planning another video where we go more in depth just on the possible villains for the next game. When it's live, I'll link it in the description below and add a card in the top right, but you can also subscribe to the channel and click the bell to be notified whenever a video goes live. Number 3. A more personal story. In the first Spider-Man game, we had a plot that centered around revenge on Norman Osborn. It led to citywide pandemonium, with a large prison break, Sable International breaking protocols, and a citywide pandemic. Even in Miles Morales, although it centers a lot on the relationship between Miles and Finn, it still culminates in this catastrophic event that could wipe out an entire section of the city. I think they need to switch from this level of destruction and focus on a more character-driven plot. Now, don't get me wrong, I still want big set-piece moments like that construction site and helicopter chase in the first game, but I'd like them to be more isolated events, while the main part of the story focuses on the characters. Kraven's Hunt is a great way to keep the villains away from the city and its citizens, and focus more on a protagonist versus antagonist kind of story. The Black Suit, and Venom especially, are intrapersonal forces that Peter has to face. Venom doesn't care about pulling a heist or destroying the city, they just want Peter to suffer. Spider-Man has always been about Peter's personal struggles and his character growth over large-scale events. Spider-Man 2 is a perfect place to really focus on this kind of powerful, character-driven story, and I hope we see that. Number 2, the origins of the symbiote. My biggest fear for Insomniac's sequel is that they might not do the Black Suit and Venom storylines justice. There have been a lot of movie and TV adaptations of the story over the years, and very few have been able to get it right. We know very little about the symbiote in Insomniac's game so far, only that it seems to be keeping Harry alive in a vat, and that Venom will appear. Interviews with Insomniac seem to infer that Peter will be getting the Black Suit at some point, since they know how important it is to fans. We'll talk more about that near the end of the video. My real fear is that the symbiote has been synthetically made by Oscorp instead of coming from space like the original story. A few interpretations have had the symbiote be synthetic, but I think that takes away from forming a symbiotic bond with a foreign and alien life form that is pivotal to Venom as a character, as well as potential future symbiote storylines. So I hope that the game explains that Oscorp just happened to find the symbiote and used it, rather than creating it themselves. Similarly, Peter needs to get the Black Suit before Venom can appear, but we'll get more into that in a minute. Now for our honorable mention, main villain oversaturation. I wanted to add an honorable mention here because the other points on this list are things that I want to see in the next game, but this one is about what I don't want to see, namely an oversaturation of primary antagonists. There are a few villains that really deserve the spotlight in the same way that Doc Ock and Mr. Negative got in the first game, and Kraven and Venom deserve that in this game. I've seen a lot of people online talking about the Green Goblin appearing at some point in this game, and I very specifically don't want that, because Goblin deserves to be the primary antagonist of a whole game, unlike any of the villains we saw in the first game. Doc Ock had a great story arc, but he only appears at the end of the game, and I'd like to see Goblin appear in an earlier act and demoralize Peter right to the end. Now I do think that Norman should still feature in the sequel quite a bit, and likely we'll see his descent into becoming the Green Goblin, possibly because of something happening to Harry, but I'm hoping that the Goblin won't make his first appearance until a third installment. This franchise is probably way too successful for Sony to stop after this second game, so Insomniac should have plenty of time to create fully fleshed out stories. I feel similarly about Carnage. I don't think the game should be bloated with too many symbiote stories. Venom should get his moment to shine, and after the mess that was Venom Let There Be Carnage, we are in more need than ever for a good Carnage adaptation. He could potentially be in the DLC that will inevitably come out for the sequel, but I think that, much like the Green Goblin, Carnage deserves a bigger spotlight. He could even be a good tandem main antagonist with the Green Goblin. If we will eventually be getting a Carnage story, I hope we have a side mission in the sequel to introduce Cletus Cassidy that can in time lead to Carnage.
Cassidy is gone. There is only Carnage!
Number 1. Who is Venom? We know that Venom will be making an appearance, but who will they be? There's a lot of speculation about Harry becoming Venom, since we see him in a vat with a black symbiote at the end of Miles Morales. That's certainly a possibility. Other adaptations have had Harry take on the symbiote. The problem I have with that is that the Harry we got to know over research stations seems like a genuinely good and pure person. In order for him to convincingly become Venom, Insomniac will have to tell a truly phenomenal story of falling from grace. It is definitely possible, and if anyone could do it, I trust Insomniac. But with what we know now, I think it would be extremely out of character for Harry. Our next obvious option would be Eddie Brock. Venom will likely be a villain that appears late in the game, so it would be very possible for Insomniac to introduce us to Eddie early in the game, develop his hateful relationship toward Peter and Spider-Man, and then have him become Venom. This is of course the canon story, so it's hard to go wrong there. There's a backpack entry in the first game in which Peter talks about Eddie, so we know he exists in the universe and they know each other. I think that this is both a likely choice and the most obvious. Whether they go with Harry or Eddie, the most important thing to me is Peter getting the symbiote before either of them becomes Venom. It should be simple enough for the symbiote to escape once Harry is released from his healing chamber. There is a third option though that could be very interesting. It's safe to assume that we'll be getting Black Suit Spider-Man, but with this being a darker story from Insomniac's own mouth, what if Peter succumbs to the suit more than he normally would? He's already faced a heavy trauma with the recent loss of Aunt May, and now he has the added responsibility of trying to make sure nothing bad happens to Miles. If Kraven is a fierce enough enemy, Peter may need the suit in order to beat him. If that's true, maybe we'll see a dark transformation for Peter actually becoming Venom in order to defeat Kraven. Now with the symbiote overtaking Peter to a certain degree, that may leave Miles with the task of saving Peter from himself by defeating Venom and getting the symbiote off of him. This is a great way to shift the story between Peter and Miles. It also would let the people who want to play as Venom do so for a short time to battle Kraven. This could be a very emotionally impactful story between Peter and Miles that I would love to see. And we could still be introduced to Eddie Brock at some point during the story, and once Miles saves Peter from the symbiote, it could move to Eddie, and we could get even more of a Venom story in the DLCs. It's hard to say exactly what avenue Insomniac will go with, but they have a lot of options with just the 3 I've mentioned here. Although I think my vote is still for an Eddie Brock story. Regardless of what Insomniac ends up doing, I think we can look forward to a solid story and another great game. There are so many different things Insomniac can do, and even if they did a canonically perfect story, it still wouldn't please everyone. It's fun to think about and discuss anyway. Remember that these are all my own personal ideas and what I'd like to see. It's totally okay if you disagreed. If you enjoyed the video, make sure to hit that subscribe button and click the notification bell because there will be plenty more Spidey content swinging your way. Happy web slinging, Spider Totems.